We all know the saying, behind every successful man, there's a badass broad.
And that badass broad is the unstoppable, unflappable, and by very definition, unhinged Harley Quinn. Yes, unlike a lot of the other screen goddesses we're spending time with, Harley Quinn is a fictional character rather than an IRL person. But that's in part what makes her journey so exciting, as she's transitioned from the small screen to the comic book page, to the video game stage and big screen over 30 plus years. Although an iconic comic book villain, Harley Quinn, aka Dr. Harleen Quinzel, first got her start on the small screen in Batman the Animated Series and 1992 episode Joker's Favor. Created by Paul Dini and Bruce Timm, she was supposed to appear in just one episode as a comic relief henchwoman for the Joker, and was voiced by Dini's college friend and actress Arlene Sorkin, who had recently seen play a jester in a dream sequence on Days of Our Lives. That also ties into her name and costume, both winks on the Harley Quinn archetype. Yet the character proved so popular among fans that she made her first appearance on the comic book page just a year later, in 1993, and from there was no going back.
Hi, I'm Nicola Scott, and I'm an artist at DC Comics. Comparatively, she's not as old as a lot of the other sort of DC Rogues gallery, but she's come into being during this sort of era of deconstruction and reanalyzing and complexity with characters. And because she is, by the nature of her mental illness and her high intelligence, she's a really interesting character to sort of continue to develop and reanalyze and contextualize. And I think that is one of the things that sort of made her more and more, because it's kind of been a sort of slow snowball of interest. Like, you know, she was a bit of a favorite as soon as she was created, but for the sort of real complexity of her origin story, it's taken a while to sort of really understand the nature of who she is, of her origin, of the role that the Joker plays in her life, not just the role that she plays in his. And her attitude and perspective on the world is so distinctly different from every other, specifically Bat villain, but I would say villain in general. There's sort of a really interesting space to play with her that is quite unique to her. And she's got, you know, a bunch of great sort of evolution of a great look.
Dr. Harleen Quinzel was an award-winning gymnast and genius-level psychologist who, after spending time treating the Joker in Arkham Asylum, fell in love with her patient, broke bad, and went on to become one of pop culture's most fascinating and complex female characters. Whether it's her own solo comic book stories that popped up in the late 90s or adaptations into the video game space in the noughts, her maniacal moral compass has been one of the things that has drawn people in. What started as a character for Batman baddie the Joker to bounce off has instead become a vessel for nuanced and complicated discussions about mental health, abusive relationships, gaslighting, sexuality, and much more, as Harley Quinn has hit the main stage with Margot Robbie's portrayals across 3 films so far: Suicide Squad, The Suicide Squad, and most relevant to this discussion, Birds of Prey, the fantabulous emancipation of Harley Quinn.
A Harley Quinn's role is to serve an audience, a master. You know, Harley Quinn's nothing without a master. And no one gives 2 fucks who we are beyond that.
Part of the brilliance of Birds of Prey was how the male gaze, which had held such sway over the character, was subverted by a female creative trio in Kathy Yan, Margot Robbie and Christina Hodson, who were able to fuel the female experience on screen too, surrounding Harley with kick-ass female characters she could bounce off, not just physically, but emotionally.
You know, she is, like I was saying, you know, that sort of that newer character. She's come out of this era where we're just sort of thinking about characters in a more sophisticated way. And I think that she's one of these characters that I don't think she's quite stopped evolving yet. I don't think we've sort of necessarily, we've hit a high watermark, certainly, with her to date. But I think she's got sort of quite a lot more material and perspective to give us. I think she's a really sort of just nuanced is not quite sufficient a word. She's just a really complex character. And part of that is her own desire to understand herself. That I think sort of really is best hit on in the animated series. That they sort of really let her evolve from the beginning of the first season to the end of the third.
The critically acclaimed Harley Quinn animated series sees Kaylee Cuoco voice the title character and has spanned nearly 40 episodes across 3 seasons so far.
It's me, dickhead. By the way, that's also the Wi-Fi password.
Using biting black comedy, the series has given the character more real estate than ever before to examine not just the gender constructs of the genre or what makes Harley tick, but to break down the legacy of a screen goddess who has existed within the superhero landscape for decades.
Her whole evolution of her point of kind of being someone for the Joker to talk to, besides a goon, and sort of some amusing eye candy, to how the running gag of her being at his disposal comes sometimes literally, and how that was kind of re-examined over the last 15 years of her just sort of being a little more complex than that, and then eventually just sort of gaining her own agency. I think that's sort of that modern perspective, because it is not a Generation X thing. It's not even really an elder millennial thing, of understanding your flaws rather than putting them aside or putting them in a drawer. Sort of properly sort of giving name and voice to them, and, you know, finding your strength in them. It's really only been in the last sort of really decade that she's properly been allowed to sort of have her own agency.
Can I help you?
Why, yes, you can. I'm here to report a terrible crime.
And what terrible crime is that?
This one